I spent hundreds of hours testing note-taking apps, Apple Notes, Freeform, Notability, and I've also helped a lot of my students use these apps. And I found that the best note-taking app by far is none of them. Now, I'm not telling you that apps are useless. What I'm telling you is that apps were never the thing holding your learning back. This is because learning happens in the brain. It doesn't happen on the iPad. It doesn't happen on the app itself. And that's the one fact that most study tubers get wrong. Like they just don't realize that it's the cognitive skills that actually makes the difference. So you need to run away from these YouTubers that are promising you results once you use their note-taking app of choice, because they probably get paid if you just use their app. So I'm going to go through 4 rules that the best learners adhere to in any app. And towards the end, I'll give you a simple checklist that I use to pick a note-taking app on my iPad, so nobody can sell you the wrong one ever again. And if you've been app hopping, waiting for the one that finally clicks, this video is for you. Rule 1 is slow. And this one's quick and easy. Whenever you can, use apps that force you to write by hand instead of typing. When you type, you can keep up with almost anything. You'll start transcribing things for word, and you won't really be thinking. When you write by hand, you physically just can't write everything, right? So if you're in a lecture, you can't write everything the lecturer is saying, or if you're watching a video, you can't write everything the video is saying. Your brain is forced to do something useful, and that's to decide what matters, compress it, what doesn't matter, get rid of it, and put it in your own words. That selection is the first rep of learning. And I should be honest, the research isn't super clear cut on which method, like typing or handwriting, is consistently better. But what I know from coaching my students, handwriting drastically cuts down how much you can physically just get down on your paper or your note taking. And that limit is the whole point. Like getting nerfed is the point, because it actually forces you to think harder about what's worth keeping. As a result, there's a higher probability that you will engage in that deeper productive thought. Unfortunately, typing does the opposite in most situations. People get away with typing a lot. And so a lot of your cognitive resource goes into getting every single word on the page instead of getting every single word or most words into your brain where it needs to be. And so while we're here, another thing that I'll mention before we move on to the second rule is that I find in my experience, you should avoid the AI features in a lot of these new note-taking apps. In my experience with my students, especially for the initial part of note-taking, they're not very useful. Admittedly, the AI stuff can be quite useful during revision, which happens after notes, and we'll talk about that in another video. But the reason I mention this is because a lot of the learners that I work with, they've reported that there's like less engagement during a lecture or during a meeting because they know they've got their AI assistant and their bot that's like taking all the notes, and they can just refer to it after the session is done. But the reality is most people don't have time to refer to it after the session is done. And also, if you can get it well done in the first session, you don't need another session. So the job when it comes to note taking is to make sure that you are doing the thinking. Rule 2 is struggle. And this is the biggest rule, if not the most important rule. So you really want to pay attention for this one. You actually want note taking to be a little bit hard. And there's a principle in learning science, it's called desirable difficulty. A certain amount of mental effort, what's called cognitive load, is what actually enables deeper thinking about the content, which translates into long-term memory. The strain of putting ideas in your own words during your note taking, connecting two ideas together that didn't go well, or working with a messy bit of notes until it makes sense, all of that strain is productive learning. That's actually what learning is, what effective learning looks like. And your brain stores the information in these webs, what we call a schema, and building that web is meant to be effortful. It actually takes time. It's like going to the gym. You got to lift hard to get those muscles. So if your note-taking app feels effortless, that's a warning sign. So if your note-taking app of choice is not really making you think hard, you need to really be thinking about that. Let me be specific because, telling you to struggle more is useless advice when I don't actually tell you to do anything. But let's say, for example, you've decided to use Apple Notes or Freeform or Notability, whatever you've got. A really easy way to introduce the struggle is using a technique, what we call importance ranking technique. It's the importance ranking technique, and I teach it to most of the new learners, professionals, and students that I'm working with. So essentially what you need to do is just go through the material that you're learning and just take a look at the concepts, extract the keywords, and just rank on a scale of 1 to 5. What's the most important? And then on your notes, put the number next to it and try connecting a bit of the information. Let's do a demonstration so you can actually see what this looks like, and I'll show you why this is such a powerful thing to do, independent of your note-taking app of choice. Okay, so here's a super simple demonstration of the importance ranking technique. I've just gone on to Claude and I've just asked it for a paragraph on social psychology, but you can see there's quite a few definitions here. And what I would simply do is I would just take out my note-taking app. I'm using Freeform, so this is the free one that comes with any iPad. So again, you can see we're doing this process. It's not really, doesn't really matter which note-taking app we're using as long as we're using this process. And what I can just do is I'm just going to read through those paragraphs on the left-hand side. Social psychology. Cool. So you can see I've got social psychology as my first keyword, and then I've also got sociology as my second keyword. So for social psychology, if I had to rank that on 1 to 5, how important is a term social psychology? In my opinion, I would actually give it maybe a 5 because it actually defines social psychology. If you take a look at social influence here, we take a look at social cognition and attitudes, group processes, all of these are like sub-concepts under social psychology. So social psychology is like the broad overarching concept. And I feel like that's actually one of the most important things to define very well. This is going to be number 5 here. Sociology, which is the study on group levels, is about how situations shape ordinary people. So it's the other way around. Is that important to define? I think it is, but not as important as social psychology. So you can see what I've just done there. In my rationalization as to why sociology is 4, I made reference to social psychology. And then I made reference to the other terms on this list as well. So if I quickly go social cognition and attitudes, and let me just read that as well. Okay, that's really important. Heuristics and persuasion, etc. So if I had to actually get that, all right, if I had to just connect these two, I'm just going to connect them really quickly. I'd just say social psychology is a bit more important than sociology itself. And then there's another connection that goes here. So I'm just drawing some relationships, some arrows. And we've also got social cognition and attitudes. So I'm just going to put cognition and attitudes. How important do I think this is? I think this is probably going to be a I think this would actually be a 4. And then I think sociology would be a 3. So this is okay. Again, I'm changing my thoughts. I'm like, maybe it's not as important because, it's just defining the order. But then part of me says that this could be a 5 as well because like we need to understand the direction. Social psychology is the individual to a group, and then sociology is a group to the individual. So I don't know, like I'm just really frustrated right now. Like you can see, this is a cognitive load kicking in. Could it be important? Could it be not? So we'll just keep going. Social influence. I feel like here we go. Social influence. How important do I think that is? Do I think it's more important than social cognition and attitudes? Maybe it might be similar. I feel like it's almost maybe the same. Oh man. All right. Social influence. Let me just actually read it a little bit more. Field's most famous territory. Okay. Conformity studies. All right. So, I mean, that's already given me some data that this could actually be more important than social psychology, social cognition and attitudes, but not as important as the definition. So I might actually give it a 4.5 here. I feel like it's a little bit more important than that. All right. Let me just go to group processes. I feel like group processes, I've studied this before. I'm going to say it's a 3. It's cool, but it's not as like important in my opinion as those overarching definitions, and I just might connect those there and give this a number 3. Intergroup relations, is that more important than group processes? Nah, I don't think it is because it's actually it's a subgroup if I remember. So I might put intergroup relations there, and I might actually put that as a 2. There we go. There's a few more, but I'm just going to end the demonstration there. You can see there's another strategy that we're using here. It's like mapping and creating relationships. So this is relational mapping, relational thinking. I'm not going to talk too much about that here because I talk about that in other videos. But you can see like that process of just doing the importance ranking, it really did make me think hard. Like my brain was actually kind of hurting, if I had to be very honest. But that's the point. You can see I could use Freeform, I could use Apple Notes, Notability, Miro, whatever it is, as long as I actually just work on the actual learning strategy itself. So let's talk about why this actually works and what's happening under the hood when we use the importance ranking strategy. So based on that demonstration, here's what's happening under the hood. To put a number, to put a ranking on an idea, you need to weigh the idea against others, and it produces a small bit of meaningful higher order thinking. It feels minor, but it slowly opens the door to deeper cognitive retraining if you've never done it before. And you'll notice that you'll have to sit with each of the ideas longer. Your notes aren't going to be progressing as much, but that's the point. That's the struggle. It's actually doing its job. And the most important thing here, again, to notice is that this technique, this strategy that you can use, this learning strategy, it's independent of the app. It works on Apple Notes, it works on paper, it works on whiteboard, it works everywhere, and it still produces that result. So this is what I mean by focusing on timeless techniques and principles instead of chasing new apps. And if you found this useful and you want more techniques like this one, subscribe to my newsletter because that's where I cover this type of thing. Rule 3 is shift. You should be able to move things around, cut them out constantly, drag an idea in another place, delete an idea where it doesn't earn its place, rearrange the app until the structure of your notes actually reflects how you think. And the reason this is important is because this shifting is part of learning. Because every time you recognize there's a new way of thinking about a certain idea, maybe you were wrong about how you're thinking about something, you actually update your understanding. So you want a note-taking app that actually allows you to rearrange freely, as opposed to just having a canvas that's hard to rearrange. So just taking a look at popular apps, I find that Apple Notes, Procreate, GoodNotes, they lean towards being a little bit hard to drag things around. Obviously, typed note-taking apps, we're not even talking about them here. Instead, I'd encourage you to use tools that have a lasso tool that allow you to change things around, select them, and move them. A few recommendations that I can give you, and I'm not sponsored by any of them, is Concepts. I personally use this. Concepts and Miro, I use this as well. Omni and Freeform, which is Apple's native note-taking app, parallel to Apple Notes. And again, the mistake to avoid here is to just put everything down pat, have your nice, neat notes, because effective learning is chaotic. If you don't cut things and change them, your notes just become a storage dump. Rule 4 is scope. Before you write out any notes, you just need to zoom out and get the lay of the land. What's the big picture here and how does it connect to what you already know? This step is called priming, and I talk about it in a lot of other videos, but essentially, when you activate prior knowledge first, the information that already exists in your brain about something, what you already know about the topic, the new information now has somewhere to latch, as opposed to having nowhere to latch. We call this schema theory, and the TLDR is that your brain doesn't just store facts in a neat list. It connects them to these schemas, these webs, the information that you already have in your brain, because your brain is lazy. It just wants to take shortcuts and already see what exists. So when you are doing this priming step, you activate prior knowledge, which then gives new knowledge a place to stick. Unfortunately, most people do the opposite because number one, they're not really focused on the learning process. They're just focused on the note-taking app. They just open up a new page and then they just start and they just keep going and they learn the new topic, they learn the new content, but your brain doesn't have anywhere to attach that. So it does what it's best at doing. It just forgets it. I've made a few videos on priming, talking about pre-studying and pre-testing, and I go a lot deeper there. So if you actually want to see a demonstration and get good at this, I'm going to put it on the screen somewhere. And again, like everything else, like this technique that we're talking about, like the importance ranking technique, this is completely app agnostic. You can do it on an iPad, you can do it on a whiteboard, you can do it on the back of your hand. So the checklist, 4 quick questions. 1, slow. Does it help me write by hand instead of pushing me to type? 2, struggle. Am I feeling that productive struggle, or does this feel too easy? Notice this one isn't about the app. It's about how you use it. 3, shift. Can I move things around and cut them fast on an open canvas? 4, scope. Am I taking the time to consider prior knowledge first and then exposing myself to new content? And again, that's on you, not the app. Now, here's what I want you to notice. Only 2 of those 4 questions is about the app at all. The other 2 that we talked about are about what you do with the app. So the app is only one part of the equation. The rest, if not the majority, is always the learning strategies that you use. And that's the whole point of this video. So if a tool ticks all 4 of those, it works. A whiteboard with a 0.5 felt pen, tick all 4. A3 paper ticks all 4. And most iPad note-taking apps tick all 4 as well. So Here's the takeaway. Stop asking which app is best. Run slow, struggle, shift, and scope through what you already have, and you'll outlearn someone with the best note-taking app. So, share with me in the comments, what do you think about my take? And was there anything that popped out? I'm responding to every single comment.